So this story takes place in 1963 in northern Mexico along the Sierra Madre Oriental, and these scattered villages sit completely cut off from the outside world. There's no electricity, no education, no real contact with modern society, and above one of these villages, a system of caves carves deep into the mountains. Most people avoided them, but one 14-year-old boy didn't. His name was Sebastian Guerrero. And like a lot of people in his village, he'd heard the rumors that somewhere inside those caves there was hidden treasure. So one night in May, he went looking. No flashlight, no plan, just curiosity. At first, everything seemed to be normal until he saw light coming from inside one of the caves. No one ever really went into those caves, but the light was real, so Sebastian changed direction and started climbing towards the light. As he got closer, he began to hear stuff, and at first, it sounded like laughter, then screaming, and the closer he got, the more it became clear. This wasn't a celebration. Someone was in agonizing pain, like screaming at the top of their lungs. And then he heard voices, a group of people chanting in unison. And suddenly, this wasn't just strange, it was wrong. He should have turned back then and there, but he didn't. Sebastian crept up to the cave entrance, hid behind a rock, and slowly leaned forward to look inside. And what he saw made him run for his life. But he didn't run home. He ran nearly 10 miles to the nearest police station, burst through the doors, and was acting completely hysterical. But when officers finally got him to explain, he couldn't describe it. Well, not really. So instead, he said the only thing that made sense to him, the only words he could come up with, that there were vampires inside the cave. And of course, the police didn't take him seriously. I probably wouldn't either, but I'd also know that this kid had to see something weird, and I wouldn't just blow him off like these cops did. But Sebastian kept pleading with them and pleading that they had to go check out this cave. But they just drove him home and told him to forget about it. Now, Sebastian just couldn't sleep off what he saw, so the next morning he went back to the police station begging them to listen. And this time, one officer agreed. His name was Luis Martinez, and he made a decision that would cost him his life. So Luis and Sebastian drove out to the mountain where the cave was, and then they vanished. No radio contact, no return, nothing. By nightfall, both of them were considered missing after not hearing a peep out of them. No one knew where they had gone, not Sebastian's family, not Luis's family, not his partners, no one. And that's when the local police called in the Mexican military, and together they headed toward the cave, expecting to find answers. But to understand what they were about to walk into, we have to go back 6 months. In December of 1962, two conmen who were brothers with the names of Santos and Catiano Hernandez arrived in a remote village called La Yerba Buena. And they came up with a new con, a new scam, to convince the villagers of La Yerba Buena that they were prophets of an ancient god. And it worked. As crazy as that sounds, it worked. Now you gotta understand that the people who lived in these villages were poor and generally people of low IQ. They had no education. They were pretty much completely isolated. And so the con was they tricked these people into giving them all their money, their food, their livestock, everything. Everything they could get their dirty little conning paws on. And in return, the brothers would put in a good word for them with their mighty goddess and bring them good fortune. And this went on for months. But eventually the villagers started to doubt Santos and Catiano and were starting to call them out on their lies, which, I mean, it's about time. If I give you my whole livelihood, I'm expecting some good fortune pronto, like a week max. Anyway, so when the villagers started to doubt them, they decided to double down. And instead of just running off with all these people's money and essentially everything that these people had, they decided to go to a nearby city and bring in a prostitute named Magdalena Solis. And this girl was a crazy psycho. I mean, her own brother was basically her pimp daddy, slapping her around, and they bring him too, actually. So Magdalena agrees to become the Incan goddess these guys have been pretending to be prophets of. And so they bring Magdalena and her brother back to the village and sneak her into the cave, dress her up in some Incan goddess costume, whatever that looks like, and the brothers snuck her into the cave. And they told all the villagers to follow them up to the cave, that they had a special ceremony for them. And once they all entered the cave, the back of the cave filled up with smoke, and Magdalena revealed herself and let all the villagers know, basically, I'm a goddess, so don't with me or I'm going to kill you. And this really scared the villagers. So they believed her and believed the brothers had been telling the truth, that they are in the presence of a goddess. It was supposed to be an act of performance, smoke, costumes, fear, get some more money. But something changed inside of Magdalena, because the moment she saw those villagers kneeling in front of her, believing every word, she stopped pretending. Magdalena didn't just take control, she became something else entirely. She became violent, delusional, obsessed with power, and then she demanded blood. At first, she demanded animal sacrifices. She wanted to drink the blood of the villagers' slaughtered animals and pets because she believed it's what gave her godlike powers. And of course, the villagers obliged. They were in fear for their life. And so, for weeks and weeks, this would continue, the blood sacrifices, and basically making the villagers, her and the Hernandez's brothers, as slaves. And then finally, for the first time, two of the villagers decided that they don't believe in Magdalena being a goddess or the Hernandez brothers being her prophets. And they decided that they were just going to skip town and leave the village. But of course, being the almighties that they were, the Hernandez brothers found out and told Magdalena about their plan to leave the village. And when she heard the news, she immediately told everyone in the village to make their way up to the cave again for a special ceremony. So all the villagers, including the two people that were planning on running away, they went up to the cave. And once everybody was inside, she walks up and points at the two villagers that were gonna leave town and told the rest of the villagers to kill them. Kill them now. And immediately the villagers pounce on them and beat them to death inside of the cave. And once the two people had been killed, she had them strung up on wooden pikes. And she walks up to one of the bodies and presses a chalice up against the body where they're bleeding from, fills it up, and then she drinks it. And this is where everything changed. Suddenly, Magdalena only wanted human blood. Animal blood wasn't good enough for a goddess like herself, and so for the next several weeks, periodically, Magdalena would order everyone in the village to go back up to the cave for a blood sacrifice, which they all knew what that meant. The victims were chosen at random, friends turned on friends, family members killed each other, all inside that cave, all for her. She even eventually started having the villagers getting sacrificed strung up on the pike alive, where she would then cut out their heart and drink their blood. So when Sebastian looked inside that cave, what he saw wasn't vampires, it was worse. He saw a living person being held down while Magdalena cut into their chest and removed their heart. And when Luis and Sebastian returned the next day, they got caught. They were captured, dragged inside, and sacrificed just like the others. And by the time the police and military arrived, the village was empty. Everyone was inside waiting, armed, because Magdalena knew more authorities would show up because they had just killed an officer. So a shootout erupted, killing most of the villagers, including the two Hernandez brothers. After the shooting stopped, the Mexican army would find that the cave was filled with human remains and two bloody pikes with bits and pieces of human on them. And just outside the cave in the village, they would find what was left of Sebastian and Luis. And nearby, they would also find Magdalena and her brother hiding, still alive. Ultimately, Magdalena and her brother were sentenced to 50 years in prison for sacrificing and drinking the blood of at least 15 of the villagers over a 6-week period. However, the only remains to be positively identified were Luis Martinez and Sebastian Guerrero. And all of the surviving villagers who participated in these sacrifices or who participated in the shootout with the police and the army, they were given 30 years in prison. So in just 6 weeks, she had turned an entire village into a killing machine, all because of one lie. Thank you guys for watching. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe and hit the notification button if you want to see more videos like this. We upload at least twice per week. Enjoy.